Hello, everybody. Roger Durling here, Executive Director of the Santa Barbara International Film Festival, and I'm so thrilled to have Director Kevin Macdonald and the star of the Mauritanian, Tahar Rahim, which this past week got nominated for Best Actor Golden Globe. Um, Congratulations, Tahar. Incredibly
Thank you.
well-deserved honor. And I'll start with you, Kevin, about, what was it about this project that compelled you to direct it?
Well, I've been aware of the book that this is based on, Guantanamo Diary, which is the book that you see in the film sort of being written. There's letters that are coming out, and it's the only book up to this day that's been written from inside Guantanamo, and it was published in 2015, I think it was. And I was aware of some of the publicity around it because it was quite a big deal, because the book was published redacted. So there was about maybe a fifth or a sixth of the book is just blacked out. And so it's this amazing object, this kind of concrete example of government censorship, as well as being kind of a compelling story. And I think the thing about, which I should say in passing, is that Mohamedou is not just a guy who's written a book. He's a real writer. And if you read the book now, you can read a version now that anyone in the audience can read a version of it, which has been unredacted. He remembered which bits had been changed, and he put in the real thing again. And he's written a beautiful new introduction, which sort of takes the story further on. And so it's a beautiful book, but I read it and I thought, I don't know how you turn this into a film. And then I spoke to him, and it was speaking to him and being so surprised by what he was like. We got on a Skype call, and he is so not what you expect. He's not embittered, he's not angry, he's warm, and he's funny, and he's very wise, and he has forgiven what happened to him. And that's the most amazing thing about this for me, is that Mohamedou's answer to what was done to him was respond with curiosity about the people who did it and empathy towards them. And people might think, oh, he's going to be somebody who hates America. And far from it, he loves America. He thought that when he landed in Guantanamo, he thought, great, this is the land of justice. I've watched Law and Order, and this is the place where I'm going to finally, he'd been in Jordan, he'd been in Afghanistan, where he'd been taken by the Americans. He thought, I'm in America now, I'm going to get justice. Little did he know that 14 years later, he wasn't going to have got it. So that's what made me want to, this person, this man. And I immediately thought, there's only one person who can play him, and that's Tahar, because we'd worked together before.
In the Eagle.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. Tahar, you got to meet him. It is such a complex role. I've seen the film a couple of times, and your performance, you find humor in him. There is wit, there is wisdom coming out of this character. Can you tell us about embodying him?
First of all, it was very well written. I put the words of my director and the writer in my mouth. So when I read the script, I didn't know anything about Mohamedou and what happened to him. So I was discovering a beautiful part. I was like, oh wow, there's many layers, a lot of challenges. There's, as you said, humor, resilience, and intelligence. It was a dream role, but as I knew it was a true story, the more I would read the script, the more my feelings would change. I was very happy, then I started to get sad, then angry, and I was like, wow, angry because it's a true story and what happened to him. And I was also, blown away by his ability to forgive, to develop this beautiful philosophy. And I was like, I called Kevin and said, I'm in, because I want to do it. And at the same time, I wanted to be part of the people who do him justice. I wanted to be part of this. And the movie is bigger than just having a great performance. It was more than that. Yeah.
Yeah, Kevin, you're an Academy Award-winning documentary, and you've done incredible features. This film combines politics, crimes against humanity, but at the same time, it's highly entertaining. It plays out like a thriller. Can you tell us about finding the balance between all these different aspects?
Well, you're right. That was really the hardest thing with this film. It's a very complex structure and a very complex story to tell. And that was really what was, so difficult for the writers and I over, a couple of years to figure out how to tell this story, because it takes place over 14 years. And in the final film, you have three different characters you follow separately, and you have three different layers of time. You have the present, in which Benedict, Jodie, and Tahar in the present tense are in widescreen, and then you have the recent past, which is when Mohamedou arrives in Guantanamo, and then you have his distant past. And so to keep all of those balls in the air was complicated. And I should also say that I wanted to make a movie that would stand a chance of being seen by a wide audience. There have been documentaries, there have been books about Guantanamo, but I think some movies could do something different. They can bring a general audience. They can make you empathize with the character, feel for them in a way that changes people's minds much more than intellectual kind of newspaper articles or whatever. We all know this about movies. They're empathy machines. They put us into the shoes of somebody else, and when they make us see the world from the point of view of that person. And that's sort of what I want this movie to be. I want you to start off thinking it's a thriller and then realize, oh, actually this movie is a character study of Mohamedou, Tahar's character. And even if I started off thinking, being suspicious, maybe having instinctive kind of dislike for this suspected terrorist, I'm going to fall in love with him, and I can't help it. And that's what I hope the audience take from it.
And Tahar, Mohamedou was involved he's a producer, and he was very much involved. Can you tell us about meeting him? And was there pressure in, the weight of being responsible, of carrying his story forward? Was that weighing you down?
Sorry, absolutely.
No worries.
I felt responsible, and it stayed with me all the way long. But when I finished the script, I didn't want to meet Mohamedou straight away. I needed to read the script to know more about what happened to him, about Guantanamo and all. And I needed to lock every character's answers I needed from the script before I meet him. You see, it's the first thing I needed to do, because it's a movie and it has to be compressed. And it's 14, as just Kevin said, it's 14 years and a lot of characters compressed in 2 hours. So I needed this first, and then I wanted to meet him at last, and I did. And I felt just like Kevin, surprised by his warmth, by his lightness, his sense of humor, his goodwill, everything. And when I started to ask him some questions about the torture times, he started to change. You could read instantly the PTSD coming to life on his face, on his body. He would, move differently. His eyes would go all over the places, and I felt bad. I was like, what am I doing? I'm just taking him back there. So I am maybe torturing him. So I stopped, and I felt that the best way to catch his spirit was to spend time with him and to talk about his life, about his relationship with his lawyers, with his guards, with his family before and after Guantanamo. But there was one point that I needed to understand, because as I said, I really wanted to do him justice. It was the first audience I wanted to please. And I was afraid that he would feel in a way betrayed or diminished or something when he would watch the movie. So it stayed with me every second, every time I would play him. But this question about forgiveness, I needed to understand. I don't know if I would be able to to forgive people who's done so, this to me. So I asked him and I said, when you understand that for forgiving people is a treat you give to yourself, so your mind is free and you can fly beyond this little metal box.
Correct.
You understand? And plus, he said you might have the power to change people's minds, and he succeeded with his guards. The one who tortured him became his friends in a way. They sympathized with him, and they finally understood. He had the ability to put himself in the shoes of others, and he read a lot of things about America to understand them, and to finally come to the conclusion that there was a victim as he was a victim of fear. But man, yeah, you might be very wise to reach that level.
Kevin, I want to talk a little bit about your stylistic choices. You keep it very realistic for the first 2/3 of the film, and then when we finally get to the torture sequences, you change the ratio. You get us visually inside his psyche. Can you tell us about the visual choices that you made? It's pretty intense sequence.
It's a very intense sequence, and obviously that was the intention. That's probably the sequence we spent. Well, it's definitely the sequence we spent the most time talking about. Myself and the DP Alvin Kuchler and the designer and everybody, because obviously it's the center of the dark heart of what Mohamedou experienced, and those, I think it's 76 days, were horrific. And we knew we wanted to do them justice and be truthful about what happened. So everything that you see in there is documented, not just from Mohamedou's book, but also from documents that are now available on the internet. You can see American government documents as to what was done. So, they did threaten his mother that they were going to bring her and have her raped. They told Mohamedou that. He had visions of her being in the cell. They took him out to do a fake execution out in a boat, pretended to drown him in the water. They sexually molested him in this way. All of those things actually happened. And it was important to Mohamedou and to me to say, this is true. That's why at the front of the movie, it says, this is a true story. The parts with Benedict's character and Nancy's character are as true, I would say, as any biopic. But there's things that are sort of, compressed and manipulated and altered for dramatic effect. But what happens in Guantanamo, and particularly what happens in that sequence of the torture, is fact. That's what happened, and that was very, very important to all of us. But at the same time, we didn't want to scare everyone off and make a sequence that was going to be so shocking, or so unwatchable that people would just switch off, walk out of the theater or whatever. So what we decided, which was in keeping with the approach to the rest of the film, is that we would try and go inside his head, deeper inside his head, and make it a subjective experience. I think the movies that have been done in the past, where we have seen, I'm thinking of Zero Dark 30, The Report, we've seen bits of torture, not in Guantanamo, but elsewhere at that period. They were done from an American point of view, from an objective point of view. And obviously, in my opinion, egregiously in Zero Dark 30, although I think it's a magnificently made film, I think it's a morally flawed film because it suggests falsely that torture gets real intelligence, and it doesn't. And they were dupes of the CIA for believing that in the when they made that movie, and that's now been pretty much debunked by everybody. We didn't want to fall into that trap. We didn't want to objectify what was done from an American perspective. I wanted to continue the journey that we're on in the film, which is to go more and more and more into Mohamedou's perspective, into his head. So we chose to go into a surreal, distorted world that is my impression of what it feels like, what it felt like to be Mohamedou inside his head. So it's more about the psychological effect than about the physical exterior objective effect.
And Tahar, how difficult was it that to shoot all those sequences for you?
Very difficult. Just to understand it and to find a way, uh, and intellectually to find a way to portray it, to play it, was interesting, because I didn't know if I would be able to make it up with just my experiences and the way I would see it or imagine it, and I couldn't find a way to do it except but doing it for real in a way, to get as close as possible to the conditions Muhammad has been through.
Hmm.
I needed to get a feel, otherwise I wouldn't. You're, as an actor, you're looking for truth. It's all that matters, and to touch the truth and the specific case, I needed to get a feel. So what you see on screen is what I did. It happened. I didn't want to. We've been careful, because I want to put myself in danger, but as I wanted to go as far as possible, and it was going on, and the more I would try it, the more I wanted to go further. So yeah, the waterboarding, the force feeding, the cold cells, and the shackles. I tried it. There's nothing compares to what Muhammad has been through, but
Hmm.
I started to feel it at a point, to a point of this hallucination scene was almost real for me, because I never took drugs. I never got sick uh, to the point to hallucinate, and I didn't know how to make it believable. And I was very tired with the diet and all we did in the last days of shooting. We needed to wait this moment to shoot it, schedule wise, and I was exhausted. And I almost felt like my mom was with me in the cell, and I couldn't do it
Wow.
only once. I said to Kevin, I can't do it twice. You remember?
Ye-
And I
I
almost
remember.
boom. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the very end of it. There's the sequence where you see your mother in the cell, and it's the emotional pinnacle, I guess, of what he's experiencing. Um, we've got to know his mother a little bit in that opening sequence, and then here she is appearing in his cell, and he thinks, what's so heartbreaking is he thinks that she's there for real. And although she's been taken prisoner, he's happy to see her because he just wants some human
Mm.
connection, some human warmth. And that Tahar did that in such a heartbreaking way. The realization, oh, I think it's her. Oh my God, it's not. It's this fantasy, this horror in my head. Um, and so that's the kind of the pinnacle of his emotional misery, I think.
Hmm. Um, uh,
Yeah.
Kevin, it's a pretty ambitious um, film in the sense that you have many locations. You have, I mean, I lost count. There's like about four distinct locations in which the film takes place.
Mm.
Can you tell us about managing? We have Afghanistan, we have New Mexico. Of course, we have Guantanamo, and we have Mauritania.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about managing those four different worlds and more?
Well, I think that in a way, the hidden hero or heroine of this film is the editor, Justine, who I've worked with for many years. She did The Last King of Scotland the last time I talked to you 15 years ago in Barbara, that film with Forrest Whitaker. She did that movie. She's done most of the films that I've done, documentary and otherwise. And I think what she's done that's so brilliant is that you barely think about the different parts of the story, the different levels of flashbacks, the different locations, whatever. You just go with it, and you're sucked along by the flow. So I think she did a brilliant job of that. But we spent a lot of time figuring out different ratios, as I said. So when we go to a tighter 4:3 ratio to indicate that when we are in the Benedict Cumberbatch world, the world of Washington, we have a totally different sort of color scheme and a color timing feel to that, a different way of moving the camera than when we're with Jodie Foster, when we have more sort of earth tones and organic kind of a Albuquerque kind of feel. And again, we move the camera differently in her world. So we're all the time looking in a very simple way, actually, a lot of the time, just for how to differentiate so that between these different worlds, the different time periods, so that audiences wouldn't be lost, because it is a complex story. And in a way, it's a story which I'm not expecting an audience to get every single little detail, but in a way that doesn't matter. It's the flavor of that, the flavor of a bit of Afghanistan, of this, of that, to portray the complexity of a life. You know, it's not all laid out for you. It's not 100% on a plate and it all absolutely ties together. Most of it ties together, but there are other bits where you have to, you know, make a bit of a leap. So for instance, the sequence where we see briefly the younger Mohamedou in his apartment in Germany with all his friends who are all sort of Arabic speaking Muslim friends who are all in Germany, all students there. And you see him with his first wife, and you know that there's some problem in their sex life. She wants a baby. He sort of either doesn't want a baby or can't give her the baby. And that was the reality, is that actually he thought he was infertile. She wanted a baby. It caused a lot of marital disputes. The torturers discovered this when they went and investigated. And so that's why they did the sexual molestation torture on him, because they knew that he had these feelings of shame around his sex life. And so the audience aren't necessarily going to 100% get that, but I hope they feel they feel that some sort of connection there. But that's one of the things that's so lovely about the end of the movie, where we see the real Mohamedou. He has this little baby with, amazingly, an American lawyer who he's now married to, and so he wasn't infertile after all.
Mm-hmm. And Tahir, what I love about watching your performance is very, very physical. You go through all these years and calibrating the physical changes in him, as well as he gets more fluent in English. Was that I hate using the word over and over again, challenge, but calibrating his journey, physical as well as the accents and stuff, was that challenging?
Yes. You can use this word. It's the right word. Yes, it was challenging, and we've been talking with Kevin about his ability to gradually speak fluently English and how we would do it. And we talked about it, and we went over the script, and we know that it's not just about making mistakes, but a different way to speak, to put verbs in the wrong place, or we thought about that, and we changed some things, some lines of the script to make it more real and believable. And it was not easy, because I had to deconstruct something. It's easier to build something than to break it down. And playing in different languages this way was a bit dizzy as well, because I don't speak classic Arabic, I don't speak Mauritanian, and I had to learn it. But it's not just learning it, because for Western audience, they can easily accept it if you just say it, not totally properly. But I needed to convince people from Middle East as well. I wanted to respect them, and it was hours of repetition and work and repeating, and and physical.
So that's one of the things that I think a lot of people don't appreciate about how much work Tahar had to do for this performance, that he speaks Algerian, but that's not the same language as classical Arabic. It's not the same language as they speak in Mauritania. They're related, but they're not the same. So he's not only having to speak in 2 other Arabic languages or dialects that he doesn't know, he's also obviously speaking French, which he's fluent in, and he has to do the main part of the performance in English. And I keep saying to people, I don't think there's any other actor alive who just had the skill set, forget about the performance, but had the skill set to be able to pull this off, and could pull it off convincingly. On top of which, there aren't many foreign actors, and you will know this better than anybody, Roger. There aren't many foreign actors who learn English as an adult who can act really convincingly in English where you feel they really understand what they're saying. Correct. And the words feel like they're really coming from their brain. And Tahar is in a very tiny number of people who have managed to master the language and master how to perform in it as well as he has.
Plus adding to the complexity is the fact that he shows us that he's learning the language and getting more comfortable, and there's an evolution, you know, of getting comfortable with English. And yeah, when you watch it a couple of times, you start just bedazzled by the journey, you know, that he undergoes.
There was something that I actually haven't, I only just recollected now. We're talking about this language thing, but there's another thing that they do, he and the other actors, in those interrogation scenes. So we decided that we didn't want to subtitle him in those scenes. We want, when he's speaking Arabic within first interrogations, we wanted to use the translation that the interrogators are getting as well, to keep it more realistic as to how you would perceive that. So one of the things, just speaking of technical skill, was that we had to run all those scenes twice. We ran them all once with just the translator speaking the English. And in those scenes, in those moments, Tahar had to mouth and get absolutely his lip sync silently of the entire scene. And then we would do it again with the translator mouthing and silently the entire scene. And amazingly, it totally syncs. His performance is so exact that we never had any problems with lip syncing.
Wow.
I forgot about that. You're right.
You know, Kevin, tell us about casting Jodie Foster. This could have been easily a very sentimental character, and it's terrifically written, of course, terrifically acted. That she, you know, you reel back the sentimentality of the character. You know, tell us about working with her.
Well, you know, I would give her most of the credit for that, because from the very first moment, I sent her the script thinking there's no way she's going to do it, because Jodie doesn't do anything anymore. So I sent it to her thinking she's the perfect person, because she has that toughness and she has that sense of an inner wound, or, you know, a sort of itch that needs to be scratched that she can't quite get to, that is so common, I think, in a lot of her best performances. And that's what I felt this character should have. I sent it to her thinking she'll say no, and then we'll go to somebody realistic who will do it. And amazingly, she responded. We met very quickly, and we talked a lot about, you know, what appealed to her about it. And it was two things. One was, I think, as a child, her mother had briefly converted to Islam. And
Wow.
she had gone to a mosque a few times, and she was so fascinated by the difference between Christianity and Islam, that in Islam, she said, the central aspect of it is justice, whereas in Christianity, it's forgiveness. And she said this film is such an interesting mix of these two things. So she approached it first of all from this quite intellectual thing that she approached, but also she recognized this is a character I can do, and that's what she said. I know how to do this character. And she said, okay, take these bits of dialogue out, and I don't need this backstory, and I don't need this. All I need is the journey, the professional journey of this woman. And we're going to understand that she's a woman who sacrificed everything in her life, and her personal life is a mess, but she's fixated on the cause and on doing the right thing. And she's absolutely right. You get who this character is without having all the, you know, the stories of her failed marriages, or the you know, the son that she's had, or the, you know, all these personal things. And I think that's a tremendous testimony, obviously, to her as an actress, but also to her ability to understand in a laser-like way. And I think this is partly because she's a director, what she needs to communicate, how little she needs to communicate the truth of a character. And it's so unvain, you know, it's the opposite. When have you ever met an actor who said, oh, cut all my lines? You don't. She said to me, cut this, cut this, cut this. Even when we were about to shoot some scene, she would say, I don't want this line, take this line, take this line out.
Yeah, there were even some specificities about, you know, the way she moved her hands. There's quite a detail in, I mean, as I said, specificity about what she does.
Yeah.
So,
she's there. She, a lot of the time she is channeling the real Nancy, who she got to meet. You see her, obviously, the real Nancy, obviously briefly at the end of the movie. They met a couple of times, and then Nancy also came to the set in South Africa, actually, with the real Mohamedou. And so, I mean, Jodie's just very smart because she's not doing an imitation, but she just takes certain things. So she wanted to do the red nails, this sort of strange, because Nancy's a strange person in a way, she's a contradiction. You've got like the red nails, this very distinctive haircut, the jewelry, whatever, this very distinctive style. She drives a sports car. She's kind of like trained doing Formula One racing. She went on some, so she does that, but she's also this just completely forensic, detailed, obsessive civil rights lawyer who has mostly, by the way, in her life, as she will tell you, represented guilty people. She said 95% of people I'm representing are guilty, and I know they're guilty from my own, but I'm doing this because everyone deserves to have a defense. And that's what she thinks of Mohamedou when she first meets him. She's like, well, he's guilty, but he deserves this, and I'm giving him what he deserves. So it's this kind of abstract, noble notion that she has. And obviously the journey of the film, which is the real journey that Nancy went on, is to actually see him as a human being and to grow, to not be afraid of feeling fond of him, loving him. And now when you see them together, it was very funny when they came to South Africa together. They're like an old married couple. I mean, there's like, I don't know, 30 years age difference, but they bicker with each other. They're incredibly loving with each other, caring for each other. It's really, really sweet.
Yeah, and Tahar, tell us about working with Jodie.
Oh, wow. Oh, it was great. It was really an honor for me. An actor of my generation, as an actor, I grew up with her movies and her performances. So, and I really respect her as a person because we knew that she was very clever, that she has her opinions, and that she's a nice person. We knew it, but when you meet her, I would admire her, but I admire her more now. I was like a bit nervous meeting her, and the way she is, the way she behaved, her personality relaxed me, and I felt like I was working with a partner. And yeah, and we started like that, and on set we wouldn't talk that much because we had a lot to do, and I respect my fellow actors. I don't want to disturb them, and I obviously needed to focus very deeply for this part. But we had kind of a secret language without words. It's like you can trust someone. We can trust each other. It was in some little stares here and there. It's like when you are, for example, a pianist and you go to a jazz club and people are, you have a casting. They don't tell you what they're gonna play, and the trumpetist starts, okay, 3, 4 notes, and you gotta follow, and then suddenly you create a music because you trust each other and you talk the same language, and that's what happened. So between action and cut, it was magical, and she raised the game all the time, and as you said, she's very subtle. The way she plays with her pen, with her shades, she knows how to hold the space. She knows exactly where the camera is, and she's got the right rhythm all the time. And it was a big pleasure.
That's great. Kevin, you mentioned Cape Town. Tell us about recreating Guantanamo in Cape Town, and how accurate is it, the recreation of the cells and the prison itself?
Yeah. Well, it was one of the producers suggested that we go to Cape Town for this. We were originally thinking, combinations. There was something in America, something in Morocco, something in Europe, something in, somewhere else. And they said, you can get everything in Cape Town, and they have a tax break. So there you go. So, that's obviously very helpful. It was a very tight budget on this film. And in Cape Town, sure enough, you've got kind of tower blocks and, generic American feeling downtown. And you've got some older kind of colonial feel. And you've got a really great crew who are experienced with doing a lot of big international films. And most crucially, we had the ability to build right on the ocean front, on beautiful blue kind of Caribbean feeling ocean, but with nothing else around, and a vegetation which is actually very similar looking to what you would find in Guantanamo. Sort of dry, very dry coastal region, very low, scrubby kind of thing, with mountains in the distance. So that was when I went there on the recce and I saw that, I thought, okay, we can build Guantanamo here, and it'll be better than anywhere else I've seen in the world to do this. So we built actually 2 different sets for Guantanamo, one on the ocean, so we could do the whole entry and everything. And then, because I love the idea of Jodie and Shilling walking in with sort of wind blowing them, and the sort of the sound of these big rolling waves of the Caribbean. And then we built another one somewhere a bit further away from the ocean where it wasn't quite so incredibly windy and difficult to access. We built the kind of interior part of the set. And as I said, the 2 things that were really important to Mahamadou were, because I should say, he's a man who loves movies, Roger. He has seen so many great American movies when he was in prison, because the guards would give them to him. After he had confessed, he was allowed to have a DVD player, and guards used to bring him movies. And most of them are what the movies that 19-year-old soldiers, American soldiers, would have. So they're kind of trashy action movies and whatever. But he also saw my film, The Last Game of Scotland, there, which is one of the reasons we got in touch. And he also saw his favorite movie, The Big Lebowski, which he saw 86 times. He knows every line by heart, and including the song, the Bob Dylan song that is at the end of this movie, which is taken from The Big Lebowski, The Man in Me. So he's very sophisticated about what it makes a movie. He's kind of like, he's not like most real people are like, but I want to have the bit where I do this and I want to have that, and that's not right. He's like, it's a movie. He was more sophisticated about that than the American characters who we were representing, who you would think would understand how movies made, but they still had a Nancy and Stuart Couch. He was like, it's a movie, I get that, but the things I want to be accurate are the torture, because it's important that is absolutely real, so nobody can say that didn't happen like that or something. And the other thing was what the cells felt like when he's inside them, and what the sort of the walkways and where he could exercise, because he said to me, the American government spent millions of dollars keeping this secret, so nobody really knows what it was like in there. And this is one of the things we can do. We just show people what that space was like, what it felt like, how the guards acted, how they chained people. So we used his memories, which were very specific, to reconstruct the cells exactly. With a designer, we'd say, I want another window in here. And I'd say, no, it wasn't in there. It wasn't for real. Mahamadou says there was no window. We're not having a window. The DP was, furious at me because he wanted somewhere to light from. But we tried to be absolutely accurate to what those spaces felt like. And I think that pays off in the sense that when you're in those cells, you feel the camera is in a tiny little space. And so we never had floating walls. We could never get out. So we were just always in these tiny spaces, crew of like 6 people, the actors, and the camera always pressed up against the wall.
And you demanded that you shoot in Mauritania. Can you tell us about the importance of shooting in Mauritania?
Yeah, because I went to Mauritania to visit Mahamadou, and it's an amazing, completely unique place. It's not like anywhere else. I've traveled a lot. It's not like anywhere else I've been. It's a little bit the land that time forgot. It's been very out of touch with the rest of the world. Most people don't know where it is, but it's, I think, the 5th largest country in Africa. It's a huge country, mostly the Sahara Desert. And then this beautiful coast that goes on for about 500 miles. I mean, an endless beach of 500 miles with nobody on it. And big waves, these beautiful painted fishing boats. Everyone is wearing these amazing robes, often in different shades of blue, indigo blue and light blue. The wind off the desert is blue. I mean, it's incredibly picturesque. And I thought, we can't reconstruct this. We couldn't do this anywhere else. And it felt like also paying respects to Mahamadou and his culture to go there. And so we after we finished in South Africa, we went to Mauritania for a week, and we filmed all those flashbacks, all the scenes for the beginning and end of the movie. That was all done in the real Mauritania. And I think it gives a flavor that's you couldn't imitate anywhere else. Plus, we had that great band at the wedding. We're a real Mauritanian wedding band.
And Tahar, I have to ask you, the most touching scene for me is the one where he's on the fence and sways, grabbing onto the chain link fence. Was that something that this was in the script? Was that something you improvised? Tell us about that moment.
It's always about the relationship you have with the director. And with Kevin, we had, it was so cool because each time I would try, I would do a take. He would give me a lot of freedom, and he wanted me to try different ways of playing in each takes. And we would build this little by little. And this moment, I felt like he misses this, and he wanted to live it and to give it to someone you don't see, because it's like playing in a theater stage. I don't even have someone to talk to. I mean, neither the audience to see. So how can we make them imagine this? So I started to do it in the center of this little courtyard, and Kevin said, "That's great. Do it again, but there, holding the fence." And then they started to shoot it in a certain way that would make you feel the waves. So that was the way we would work together. Yeah.
Wow. Well, it's a beautiful, beautiful moment. And Kevin, the cut, the edit cut where, he says, "I'm going home," and you abruptly, cut away. Can you tell us about it? It's incredibly powerful. Can you tell us about that choice?
Well, yeah, I mean, we are obviously toying with the audience a little bit there. We want them to feel what Mohamedou felt, which was, I've spent at that stage, I think, 7 years fighting to be heard, fighting to have his voice heard, fighting to experience the American justice that he had grown up believing in. And so we wanted that moment of victory. And it was actually Jodie who said to me, you need to make that a great cinematic moment. That's a moment of true cinema, she said. So I think in the script, it was just, he reads the letter, and then we cut. There wasn't this moment of real celebration. He gets up and it's Frida. And that was something that I think, Tahar and I came up with, because I think Jodie had been so insistent. She was like, this needs some really properly cinematic moment at the end. And it was something we talked about a lot just amongst us. So, and of course it's like a lot of the best things in this film, they come out of a collaboration, out of an improvisation with the actors. And it's a devastating moment, as it was for Mohamedou. And that was the moment where in reality, he, for a little while, didn't want to see Nancy and Terry. He refused to see them. He lost his faith. He stopped praying. And then slowly, the idea of releasing his book, and Nancy was fighting to get the government permission and get through the censor boards to publish his book. That became his focus. That became something to really concentrate on. And Nancy and Terry went down there as it says in the credit, every second month they would each, one of them would go, they'd spend 2 days with him, they'd hang out, they'd watch TV. They had 3 TV stations they were allowed to have, I think there. They were all the free ones because the American government wouldn't pay for it. One was the Russian press TV, bizarre. One was Iranian TV, and one was a Venezuelan soap channel, which you get in Cuba. So they would just watch like Venezuelan soaps and cook a little bit. They would try and bring some fresh food for him. And they got so close. That was when they got really, really close after that. And I love it. One other little thing I should just say about, we're talking about Tahar's amazing performance. There's a moment when he finally does get out, and it's the middle of the night. And this is what happened. He was taken in the middle of the night, midnight. They suddenly say, "You're going." They don't pre-warn you. He gets taken out in his chains.
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
And right at the end of the movie. And there's a beautiful moment that Tahar did where the camera's here, he's coming towards it, and he looks back with a kind of longing, a homesickness for this place as he's leaving the gates of Guantanamo. And I thought that was such a beautiful, instinctive thing from Tahar to say that, yes, of course, he's desperate to get out of there, but this has become home too. And there's in that sort of level of complexity, which Mohamedou will talk about, that for his first 6 months of being back in Mauritania, he made his bedroom feel like his cell in Guantanamo. He had the same light bulb. He would put the TV in the same place. He reconstructed that, and he would go to bed always at the time that they used to lock him up and whatever. So I think in that little moment, that little look, Tahar indicates all of that. The sense that actually it's not psychologically. He's going to miss this place in a weird way. This is when a prisoner, I guess, misses their prison.
Wow. And during the credits, of course, it's so sweet to see him, and he sings the Bob Dylan song. How did that come about?
Well, there's 3 bits of archive material there. The first 2 are actually were shot 6 days after he was out of Guantanamo.
Oh, wow. So
they're very, very new. I didn't do them. A lovely documentary maker called Lawrence Topham, who's made a little short film about Mohamedou called My Brother's Keeper, and specifically about his relationship with his guard Steve, who went to see him in Mauritania recently, and they've remained buddies. So Lawrence actually went out and shot that the week after Mohamedou was released, so those, and very kindly, they're not in his film, so he very kindly let me use them. So the first one of those is, him getting out of the car and the flashing bulbs and the chaos and the joy on this guy's face. And then you see him giving Nancy and Terry, the real Nancy and Terry, this necklace as a memento. And then you cut to basically 2 years later, when I went to visit him, and I was just filming him as research. That's why it's kind of, I'm a bit embarrassed. I'm a very bad cameraman. It goes out of focus a few times. But I was filming him for research, and mostly actually to share with Tahar to get him to, tell us details of things. And we were about to go out to get some lunch, and he said, "Oh, I've got to play my favorite song." And then, so my camera's still rolling, and he starts singing this Bob Dylan song, which of course only later on, when I finished the edit, did I look back at this material. And I thought that the lyrics to that song are so appropriate to this story and about his relationship with Nancy and Terry. It takes a woman like you to bring out the man in me. And it just seems so touching and appropriate. I thought that's been sent from heaven. That's the perfect thing to end this movie with.
Yeah. And last question, I want Tahar to have the last word, and tell us, what is it that you want people to get out of watching your film?
Hope, because there's hope when you know Mohamedou, when you watch him, and when you meet him, that hope exists. And I think the main thing is, if, as I said, people who have the wrong idea about people like Mohamedou or from Middle East or whatever, that if the movie can help them, questioning themselves and eventually change their mind, that would be great. And, to understand that there's this beautiful philosophy that I took personally as a direction in my life now, to forgive and to try to be, to put myself in the shoes of others and understand the other one, because I think it's important. That's what I want to give to my kids, to my wife. Yeah, if this is possible, we'll be very happy.
Wow. Well, gents, thank you so much. Kevin, it's been 15 years, but you're amazing. I love your work. I love deconstructing it and losing myself in it. And Tahar, what an incredible performance. It's transcendent. And for those who are actually listening and seeing this, if you haven't seen Tahar in A Prophet, his earlier work, you seek it out. Congratulations to you both. And once again, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you very much, Roger. It's been really nice to
No.
meet you again.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Stay well.
Thank you, Roger.
Yeah.
Thank you, really.
Bye-bye.